My name is Debby Gregorash, and my husband and I own this piece of paradise in southwestern Alberta. I mostly steward it because I'm of the belief that you can't actually own land. Perhaps the land will end up owning you, but I don't know if we can actually own the land any more than we can own the sky. So one day, my husband and I were headed to Waterton Lakes National Park. I got this really strong intuition, and I said to Frank, hey, let's turn down here into Cardston and stop at the first real estate agent. At first we thought we were going to get just 5 acres, but then I saw the 75 for sale, and I thought, ooh, that would be nice. And I said, are there any trees on it? And he says, oh yeah, I think so. I think it's mostly forest. I said, excellent. And the next day he brought us down here, and it was January, so it was winter. But we came over the hill back there, and he said, this is the ranch that's been subdivided. And I was sitting in the back seat, and I looked at it, and all of a sudden this feeling came over me, and I quietly had tears coming down my face. Because I said to myself, I'm home. So we bought the first piece of land, and then I thought, well, it's such a beautiful piece of land, and it's perfect for wildlife because the park's right next door. The Blackfoot Reserve is to the south. This would make a wonderful nature reserve. I think we'd better buy that second parcel too. So we bought that in the fall, and then the next year, on the condition that we would sell it when my husband retired, we bought a third lot for a total of 240 acres. Well, my husband retired, so we had to sell that. But we still have 160 acres of this magnificent aspen forest. And all of a sudden this word, Setaspell, came to me. And I said, Setaspell. I said, oh, that's in the closing theme song of the Beverly Hillbillies. Setaspell, take your shoes off, y'all. Come back now, you hear? When we first bought the land, there were buffalo next door and a ranch next door. The buffalo bulls later on in the spring decide to go on a walkabout. And I came here to camp one weekend, and I had already decided to put the cabin here in this spot. It had a good feeling to it. So I came up the road, and there was this buffalo bull standing right where our cabin was to go. And I thought, oh, the buffalo likes it there too. That's good. It must be good energy. And I came over and started taking pictures of him. Well, he didn't like that. He's looking at me, and then he turns and he starts walking down what is the driveway now. That there was a line of trees between me and the bison going down the driveway. And I walked parallel to him and took all these pictures. And he started to paw the earth. And he pawed the earth, and he put his head in there, and he rubbed it into the ground, and he's throwing up all this dust, and then he got down and he rolled, and then he got up, and then he's pawing some more and making all these bellowing sounds. And I'm standing there looking at him, and he stops, and he looks at me. Okay, it's your turn. And I laughed, and I said, hey, this is what humans do. And I reached in the car and I honked the horn, thinking he'd run away. Well, he didn't run away. He just stood there looking at me, unamused. So I'm staring him in the eyes, right? And then all of a sudden this voice says to me, never look a wild animal in the eyes. And right away I went, oh, sorry. And I looked down. And right then he turned and walked back down the driveway. That was a lesson in respect. All he wanted was respect. And that's all the animals want around here, is respect for who they are, how they live, what they do. Wouldn't that be magnificent if we all treated other human beings like that, with the respect that they all deserve, because they are who they are and they do what they do. Yeah, it was a great lesson. I'm learning the Blackfoot names for the animals because I figure if the Blackfeet people have been around here for 10 to 30,000 years, and I'm pretty sure most living things have a consciousness, and I think that they would understand that Blackfoot language. So I feel, again, it's a matter of respect to talk to the animals in a language that they've known for 10 to 30,000 years. We have black bear, grizzly bear, white-tailed deer, elk, moose, sometimes the American marten, bobcats, and sometimes I catch cougars on my trail camera. And of course all the birds. There's probably 40 nesting birds here, 40 species at least. I know areas where there's my favorite plants, and every spring I'll go there and wait for them to come to bloom. And like the glacier lilies, I know where they are. So I go over there thinking, are they going to be there? Are they going to be blooming? And they're blooming, and I go, oh, thank goodness you're back again. It's like having friends come back from the south, you know, after a long winter. You enjoy the shooting stars, the glacier lilies, and then you know, the glacier lilies are going to die off, the flowers, and then the shooting stars will disappear. But that's okay, because there's another batch of flowers that flower after that. So then you greet them and you're rejoicing because they're here, and then they disappear. By the time they disappear, there's a whole bunch more flowers coming up. And you have to learn them all, just to address them. I'm even trying to learn the Latin names, which I find very hard. My botanist friend has counted now, up to now, almost 300 species of flowering plants.
Every specimen that I collect ends up as a herbarium specimen placed permanently into perpetuity in the herbarium at the University of Alberta, available for study by anyone else in the future. This is a transition area between the various ecoregions. The prairies, the parkland, foothills, and the montane region are all very close in this area. We do have a number of montane species that usually are found in the mountains, such as the mountain maple. There's a lousewort that's more commonly found in foothills and montane areas that's occurring here. And false hellebore, that's definitely a high elevation foothills montane species. There's the woodland lily, which is very common in the parkland regions, which is found here. And of course you've got a lot of prairie species here. Prairie smoke, the geraniums, and the glacier lily. Good herbarium specimen has to be a complete plant. The roots, the stem, and some reproductive structures, either flower or fruit. So the plant is pressed in a newspaper folder, laid out the way you imagine it would appear on a herbarium sheet, which is slightly smaller than the size of this press. The idea is to make sure that all of the parts will be displayed so that they can be examined in the future.
It's a very rich, diverse piece of land, and it's been interesting to see what happens when it's not grazed for 17 years. So this is what nature looks like when it's left on its own, and there's all kinds of things, but mostly you have to get used to the fact that things are going to change. There was a big change last fall when the leaves were still out on all the trees and a huge snow blizzard came along. So all that snow landing on the leaves causes the trees to break. They bend over and they break. The tall, older trees had limbs snapped off. And that was bad enough, but then a wind came along, and my neighbor said that there were gusts of 160 kilometer-an-hour winds. And that blew those old guys over. You know, you look at that and you think, oh wow, I'm sad for the trees and for the forest to see that incredible destruction from the snow and then the wind. But there's a good story there too, because the animals that depend on fallen trees for their living, they can carry on. They're fine with it. For example, the trees will rot, fill with insects and larvae, and then along come the bears, and the bears shred them and make mulch out of them. It works back down into the ground to feed the new generation of trees. And of course, these trees are all clones. They're DNA identical. Each grove will leaf out together at a different time from the aspen grove next to it. And in the fall, you'll see all the leaves in one grove turn yellow, whereas the ones beside it are still green. Everything is changing. The forest changes, the aspen grows, they up and die, new things grow. It's pretty amazing. And then there's trees across the meadow here that I've loved ever since we moved here. And I watch them change, and the leaves are out now, and the leaves start off this beautiful springtime green, and then they start to change, and they get tougher, and the green gets a little darker, and even the sound of the leaves rustling in the breeze changes over the summertime as the leaves get thick like leather and flutter a certain way, tapping on each other. The tapping sound gets different. But those trees across the meadow, they're very special. They're big and they're old. There's a disease that comes here every once in a while. It's a type of a rot, type of a fungus, and it turns their bark a sickly sort of pinkish orange. And you know that tree has been infected and it's most likely going to die. Certainly it'll weaken enough so that the next big wind it'll get snapped off. But one day I looked over at my favorite trees over there, and they had a faint tinge of that pinkish orange. So I used sweetgrass, and I went out there and I prayed. I said, please don't let these trees die. They're the most beautiful trees here, and I love them. And I said, if you've got the energy to heal this, you just go ahead and heal them. And by golly, the pinkish orange went away, and the trees are fine today. I have an artist friend in Edmonton. Her name is Rama Peterson. She comes down here almost every year. This year she brought her friend Sophie Shaw with her. Where the foothills meet the prairie, there's a lot of rich vegetation that they like to try and capture on canvas. They like to go up on top of the hill there and do some drawing of Chief Mountain and the view to the north. They know Setaspell pretty well now, and they know where to go to get the best photographs for their paintings. And to sit on top of the hill and do a little en plein air painting. And I like the idea of a little bit of Setaspell showing up in their final product. I have about 8 trail cameras around here, and I catch some pretty interesting things. Mostly the footage is from nighttime. I don't see many animals during the day, although the deer do like to come over here. The moose and the elk do a lot of moving around at night. I think they're very clever to do that because they know that the humans are in their boxes sleeping and they're not going to be bothered. And the other thing about nighttime here is there's very little light from buildings. There's hardly any buildings around here. So it's a dark sky. At this time of year in the fall, it's silent. And that's when you get to hear the voice of God, the Creator. That's when you hear your inner dialogue. And that's when you feel the most at peace here, is in the fall when it's totally silent. It's very relaxing, it's very peaceful. It's a wonderful sense of solitude and solace. I have a friend named Sheila Rogers. I've known her for almost 30 years. She comes out here several times a year.
I like to come here because I find it really healing and restorative. I like to walk around through the woods. I sometimes follow the trails, but I often just follow game trails, and sometimes I just walk through the woods where there's no trails. For me, it's relaxing and calming because of the quietness around here. It's so quiet here with no motor noise or anything like that. So I find that really spiritually healing. And I love to just walk around and find little treasures and adventures. And when you're walking around, if you look under spruce trees, you'll often find bones and various things. Sometimes I'm really lucky and get a glimpse of a wild animal while I'm walking around. I guess I've seen elk and moose, bears and muskrat and skunks and badgers and all sorts of things while I've been here. One of the things that's special about this place to me is the fact that my friend Debbie owns it, and so she has allowed me the opportunity to develop a relationship with this land. And I may not have been able to do that if I hike in a provincial park or a national park or somewhere that's public land where I don't have an opportunity to come back to the same place consistently like I do here. So part of the specialness of this place is that I've developed a relationship with it over the 15 or more years that Debbie has owned it. So that's partly what I really love about it. But also, I mean, look around. It's gorgeous here. Look at the beautiful yellow colors of the leaves and the beautiful white trunks of the aspen trees. And in June, the flowers are just incredible here. So there's just so much beauty here that I don't know how anybody couldn't fall in love with it.
Nature, I find, is the most dependable thing on the planet. It always does what it does. The animals always do what they do. They never pretend to be anything else, not like people. Gradually the stories come at this place, and I'm able to relate them to other people so that they can learn these stories too. And I think that's what this place is for. It's like a field research station, a private park where people can come and learn about the flowers and trees. They can come and do some sketching and painting, hiking, snowshoeing, or they can just hang out.
Your sign fell down, so I'm acting as a signpost.